today, I plan on working mostly with kata this morning, and then in the afternoon a lot of drills. And I came to the class last night and I wanted to see how Allan taught, and I made some corrections, but for the most part, just wanted to see how the students were working out. And mostly, I saw just full speed, hard, aerobic type of kata and all. And I suggested that that's the way I used to do it when I came back from Okinawa, because when you're 20 years old, you train differently than you do when you're 70. So I wanted to see how you were doing it. But when you move so fast, it's hard to see the movements between the movements. That's the kind of phrase that I use a lot in my virtual classes, which people send me videos and all. And I learned more about that because in viewing videos in slow motion, it's amazing when you move fast, you think you're real cool and you've got balance and your timing is there. But when you see it in slow motion, you break it down and you realize there's a lot of places where you're very vulnerable. And that's what I've been spending time on the last 5 years now, working with people from all over the world and just analyzing their form so that, for instance, in a circle block, you try to understand that at any point, let's say you have 360 points in that circle, and if at any one of those points you should feel as though you can defend yourself, rather than, because it's so fast, you miss. Now, can you defend yourself when you're here? And people see that and they say, wow, I was doing that? That's crazy, So all of a sudden they start working on the basics again. So to maximize the efficiency and the practicality of every movement in your kata. You study an art that happens to use self-defense movements. And if you just want to learn how to fight, what happens, I think, in the past, we focused on kata, but we didn't really understand the purpose of it. So then we get into fighting and sparring and all that. We sort of reverted back to things that we already knew, like boxing or just street fighting, and you kept working until finally you were able to score a point, or if you were into kickboxing and all that, you'd eventually be able to become good at it, but it had no relation to your art that you're studying. And I think that's something that I think a lot of people, if they realize it is possible for you to actually use your Uechi in a Uechi manner when you cross over that line, when you go from kata to practicality, that there is a place for your kata. But it's one where I would say 90% of the Uechi community has no knowledge of it. They do kata as a ritual. Any of you guys altar boys? I was an altar boy growing up. I knew the Latin phrases, I knew all of the ritual, but I had no idea what it was for. All right, and that's where a lot of people do their kata, They have no understanding of why do they move that way. Why do they stand in the way they stand? Why did the emphasis on the angles of the arms and all that? And once they understand that, then all of a sudden, the kata starts to make sense. And then the practicality starts to kick in. The sanshin does feed the Kanchiwa and the seichen, sei-san, all the way to sansei-ryu. And even in my first book, this because Tomoyoshi told me all these things, and for the most part, I didn't really understand a lot of it. I'm starting to understand it the last 30 years. But when I would write that you start with sanshin, move to sei-san, up to sansei-ryu, and then you start all over again, but at a higher level. And then your sanshin feeds at a different level. And it's a constant routine that you go through. And for today, what I'm going to try and do is to try and focus on some of these areas to make you more aware of it. Most of you are black belts. Many of you are dojo owners and teachers, so that some of this might be helpful in running your dojo. I'm going to start off by saying, I want you to train today in a way you probably haven't been training for a while. And this is just so you can see a little bit more about what you're made of as you perform your kata. And we're going to do that in 3 levels of the kata. We're going to do it slow, soft, and then medium speed, with emphasis on breathing, and then full speed, the way you currently do it. Last night I had a smile with Allan. The first kata was full speed. And they say, okay, now this time with more emphasis, stronger. They go at the same speed. And then the third one, okay, now with more power. And of course, they're just doing the same thing over and over again. And so what I want you to try and just evaluate is if there's something to this soft, slow motion movement. Now the irony is that when you're performing your kata soft, you can't really tell the difference whether I'm being hard right now or whether I'm being soft. All right? Because inside I'm very soft. Outside, when I move, it's only the muscles that need to be moved. All right? So there's no shaking, or there's no tension or anything else, but there shouldn't be even when you're doing it strongly, or if you want to call it that third level. All right? The only thing is third level, you're just moving faster. Right. So let's play around with that by going through the first San Chen and what you would understand to be almost Tai Chi soft. And I want you to follow me in terms of the speed and all. Okay.